All right, everyone, welcome back. Excited for another deep dive with you all. Today we're looking at, two sources about destruction and revival.
Yeah, big topics, right?
Huge. And, from really different angles. So one is a story from the Quran about a ruined city, and the other is, well, some news footage from Gaza.
Quite a contrast, eh? Should be interesting to see how those two kind of speak to each other.
Totally. So with the Quran story, it starts with this guy, right?
Yeah.
He finds this city that's totally wrecked. I mean, just absolutely destroyed. And he asks, like, how could Allah ever bring this back to life?
Yeah, that's a pretty bold question to ask. I mean, imagine seeing a place that's just been completely devastated. It's hard to even fathom how it could ever be restored.
Right. But then things get kind of crazy.
hmm
So Allah basically puts the guy to sleep for 100 years.
Yeah, talk about a power nap.
I know, right? And when he wakes up, boom, the city's back, like completely rebuilt and thriving.
It's a powerful image. And it really speaks to the idea that Allah has power over life and death. You know, the cyclical nature of time destruction and then renewal. It's a concept that's found in many different religions and cultures.
So this story's like an allegory then.
Exactly. It's using this narrative to convey a deeper message about Allah's power and the possibility of revival.
And this idea of revival, it connects to the Islamic concept of resurrection, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The belief that even after death, life can be restored. That's a core concept in Islam and in other faiths, too.
There's this other part of the story that I find so fascinating. So not only is the city restored, but the man's food and drink are like perfectly preserved. It's like
Mhm.
time stood still for him.
Right. That's a really interesting detail. It emphasizes Allah's control over the laws of nature. I mean, to preserve something for 100 years, that's just mind-blowing.
Totally. It really makes you think about the nature of time. Okay, so we've got this ancient story about divine intervention and restoration. But then we shift to something much more modern and well more grounded in reality, the situation in Gaza.
And seeing those images of Gaza, I can't help but think back to that Quranic story and that idea of Allah restoring what was lost. Because what we see in Gaza is a very real and very human need to rebuild, even in the face of such incredible devastation.
Yeah, the footage from Gaza is tough to watch.
Yeah.
It's hard to grasp the scale of the destruction. I mean, you see entire neighborhoods just leveled. It's a stark reminder of the cost of conflict.
It is. And it's important to acknowledge the immense suffering that's happening there. We're talking about loss of life, displacement of families. It's a whole community that's been torn apart.
It's easy to feel overwhelmed by those images, to feel like there's no hope. But, when we were talking about the Quran story, you mentioned the human need to rebuild. Do you see that in Gaza, too? Even amidst all the destruction?
Oh, absolutely. What we see in that footage is just a snapshot in time, right? It's a moment frozen. It
Mhm.
doesn't tell us what comes next. And if there's one thing we know about humans, it's that we're incredibly resilient. People will find ways to come together to support each other, to start rebuilding, even if it's just brick by brick.
So even though we're seeing this massive destruction, you're saying there's also the potential for revival there in Gaza.
Exactly. And that potential comes from human determination from the will to rebuild and create something new out of the ruins.
Wow, that's actually a powerful connection to the Quran story, isn't it? Both showing destruction followed by the possibility of something new.
Yeah, it is. Of course, one is about divine intervention and the other is about human effort. But both remind us that even in the darkest of times, that potential for renewal is always there.
So when you look at these two sources, what's the connection that stands out the most to you?
I think for me, it's the reminder that destruction, whether it's caused by some act of God or by human conflict, it doesn't have to be the end of the story. There's always that possibility for change, for regrowth, for something to rise from those ashes.
Hmm. Yeah. It really makes you think about how destruction and revival, they're kind of intertwined on a personal level and a global level.
Right. And it raises a really important question for everyone listening. How do these two sources, this ancient story and this modern day footage, how do they change your understanding of destruction and renewal? What does it mean for you in your own life and in the world around you?
That's a lot to chew on. We've gone from a tale of divine power to the harsh realities of conflict. And along the way, I think we found some unexpected connections. It's a reminder that even in the most difficult situations, hope and the potential for renewal are always there.
And as we move forward into the future, which is always uncertain, these sources remind us that even when faced with devastation, we have a choice. We can give in to despair or we can actively work towards rebuilding. What steps can we take as individuals and as a community to make that renewal happen?
That's a great question to end on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, everyone. Until next time.